and welcome to Pod Save the Queen. I'm your host, Zoe Forsey, and I'm joined this week by the Mirror's royal writer, Jennifer Newton, because we are going to be discussing what feels like the 10,000th royal book we've had out in quite a while.
Yeah, this year there's been a lot, yeah.
There have been so many. So this is Revenge, Meghan, Harry and the War Between the Windsors, which is the latest biography from Tom Bower. And it is kind of very much a bit what it says on the tin, isn't it? The name gives it away of the vibe of this book. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, definitely. As soon as I heard that this book was going to be called Revenge, I think we all knew what we were in for.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be a nice, happy read.
No, it wasn't. And it has had, shall we say, a bit of a mixed review, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But can you kind of give us a bit of background on who Tom is? Because this is by far his first kind of piece of writing, isn't he?
Yeah, so he's kind of known as a biographer. He's wrote many biographies in the past. He's also a former reporter for the BBC's Panorama. So he's obviously got background in journalism. And some of the subjects that he's tackled so far in his biographies have been Robert Maxwell, Simon Cowell, Richard Branson, and he has also written a royal book as well. He wrote one on Prince Charles and his attempts to recover his popularity a few years ago. So it's not the first time he's dipped his toes into the royal biography world, but yeah, this one was certainly eagerly anticipated.
And there's some huge names as well, and a real kind of broad spectrum as well, you know, politics, showbiz, everything like that. And so, yeah, I wasn't surprised when we heard that he was going to do a Meghan one. It seemed like quite an obvious subject.
Yes, definitely.
But let's chat about before we go, because obviously I know you were actually on holiday when the book came out.
I was on
However,
holiday,
so you read it, whereas we in the office were reading it kind of really quickly to try and get through to write the story about it. You got to read it on holiday, didn't you? Read by the pool?
Yeah, I was on the beach.
That's the way to do it. That's a lot nicer than how I read it. So what did you think of it first off?
Yeah, it was quite a long book, actually. I know that's a very simple thing to say about a book, but yeah, it was quite long. Obviously charted mainly Meghan from, you know, her early days growing up with her parents into a, you know, life as a job and actress, then getting her big break on Suits, and then obviously the story of her and Harry meeting and her introduction to the royal family, and then swift exit. There was a lot in the book that we already knew a little bit. I don't know if you felt the same.
I completely agree. There was lots of it when I was going through, and obviously we were trying to think of the new lines that would make interesting stories for the Mirror's website and the Daily Mirror and Sunday Mirror papers. But yeah, there were bits that were new, but lots of it was all ground. But then I think that's just because we're royal losers, aren't we, Jen?
Well,
we're not the normal reader of these kind of books because we know far too much about it.
Yeah, that's very true. But I will say there was also an awful lot in that we didn't know, especially, I don't know how if you thought the same, but of her younger life, her grown up, especially when she was an actress, kind of started to, you know, get a little bit of fame when she appeared on Suits and that sort of thing. Some of those stories I hadn't heard before, so that was quite interesting to see what he had to say about that.
Yeah, it's really nice, actually. And obviously, Meghan's spoken a bit about her early days in the actress. You know, it was the Ellen interview, wasn't she, where she spoke about climbing through the boot of the car when she was on her way to an audition. And yeah, it was really nice to hear some of those stories as well. And I think for me, it made me appreciate a bit more the journey that she's come on. You know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, her dad worked in the industry, so she just walked into it. And it's like, that's not true at all. She worked hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, I could never be a wannabe actress because I just don't have a thick enough skin.
Well, no, exactly. And, you know, when you think about it, she worked, I think the book kind of makes this point, for pretty much when she graduated from college in America, it was a good 10 years before she even, you know, got the big break on Suits. She was, you know, in her 30s, if not in her 30s, approaching her 30s. So, you know, her 20s were filled with, you know, having to try
long hours, auditions,
exactly.
and rejections, which is, I know, part of it, but no, it wouldn't be that good. But there has been, I found it very it was harsh on Meghan in lots of places, which has brought it in line for quite a lot of criticism from some readers who obviously take a more positive approach to Meghan, whereas others have done so. For anyone who's not read it yet, obviously it's out now, and there's lots to discuss and lots of kind of different points from it. But since the book hit the shelves last week, Tom's actually done a few interviews, hasn't he, including with OK Magazine, which is part of the company that we work for here at Reach. So what's he been saying about it, and kind of is there any extra nuggets he's given?
Yeah, well, he has admitted in this interview that most of the people who helped him with his research with the book were people who were less fond of Meghan, shall we say. He said he was keen to talk to like old boyfriends, people who knew her from her acting days. And we already knew this. Obviously, Harry and Meghan didn't have any input into this book whatsoever. And it's not likely that any of their friends or people that work for them currently also talk to him. So I think he definitely spoke to maybe, you know, people from one side of the story, can we
Which
say?
I do think was really obvious, because for me the two comparisons to this with this book and Finding Freedom.
Yes, definitely.
And they read so differently. But we know the authors of that book spoke to a lot of Harry and Meghan's close friends and people that were very positive, whereas this, you know, I think that could be fair of everyone. If anyone you could write a book about and there'd be two different versions, my best friends in the world, I hope, would give a very different version of me than, you know, people that maybe I've had rows with in the past. So it is interesting, and it is... but it's interesting that he said that and he admitted it, which is, you know, and it's not a bad thing. It's, you know, a way of getting to the truth. But okay, that's really interesting. Was there anything else that you kind of picked up from those interviews?
Yeah, he did say that, you know, even though the book is quite critical, one thing that he was quite, you know, positive to Meghan about was that, you know, she has been successful. She has, you know, built a successful career for herself, and she's somehow managed to assume quite a lot of power within, you know, her role. She's definitely, you know, influential at the moment. I mean, people wouldn't ask her to come and, you know, speak at these big events and stuff like that. And he says that he doesn't deny her success. So he has said that.
And even though, you know, obviously she was given a royal platform, which is going to give everyone a success, but she really hit the ground running. She went straight into it, whereas other royals tend to wait, sometimes up to a year before they really start using their voice and pushing the campaigns and the causes they want. She did not do that. She was straight in there, which is amazing. And it meant she was actually able to get a lot done, because, you know, we sit there and say, you know, her flying visit to the royal family, and she was only in the royals for a couple of years, but she got a lot done in that time, which I think is a real testament to kind of her, you know, how hardworking she is and how driven she is. And it is her career up until that point that probably, you know, gave her that drive. But right, so before we go through talking about all the issues in the book, let's just get the legal bits out of the way, because obviously there's quite a lot of claims made in this book. So we will stress before we begin that everything that we say in this book, everything in it is all kind of it's Tom Bowers' claims. Nothing has been kind of confirmed. You know, nothing is thing. It's all kind of from people he's spoken to. Meghan and Harry were not involved in this book whatsoever. And Buckingham Palace, Clarence House and Kensington Palace have all actually refused to comment on the book. We have been to them to ask if they would like to add anything on the subjects, but they have declined, which is not normal. Unusual. That's what they would normally do. They're kind of, you know, the family motto sticking in, isn't it? Never complain. Now, talk me through what you took away as some of the biggest points. Was there any that really, really jumped out at you?
I suppose one of the biggest points that was made in the book, that was one of the first things that actually came out during the time that it was being serialised, was apparently the Queen's comment that she made on the funeral, on the morning of the funeral of Prince Philip, saying something along the lines of, "Thank goodness Meghan wasn't coming to the funeral." Obviously, she couldn't come because she was very heavily pregnant with Lilibet at the time. Again, like we said before, Buckingham Palace hasn't commented on these claims, and there has been, you know, some sources close to the Queen questioning whether she would have made this comment, especially, you know, she would have had so much going through her mind that, you know, she would have had to, you know, speak day, or in the days leading up to the funeral.
Meghan probably was not anywhere near her mind.
But he alleges that the Queen said on the day of the funeral, "Thank goodness," when she learned that Meghan wasn't coming. So yeah,
and that's interesting as well, because that suggests that she didn't know. Surely they would have known before, but maybe the decision about whether she would attend was a bit later than we realised, which I think is really interesting. Now the other bit that I think came out that I thought was really interesting was... Oh, I've got the wrong bit on my notes. I'm very sorry. Right, the crossover I was not expecting to read in a royal book was Meghan Markle versus Victoria Beckham.
No.
So this line that's kind of come from this is that Victoria Beckham, which I'm assuming all of our American listeners know who they are, and listeners around the world, but David Beckham is obviously one of the most famous footballers around the whole world, and obviously Victoria Beckham, Posh Spice, as she was known to me, as kind of
grown up,
someone that grew up in the 90s, obviously part of the Spice Girls. Now, Tom says that the Sussexes were addicted to reading negative press coverage about themselves, and they used to spend hours in the evening scrolling through social media, scrolling through news reports, which is something they've actually said they haven't done before, but there's been lots of contrasting reports about this. So the couple said to be worried that their close friends were leaking stories about them. And apparently, Meghan believed that Victoria Beckham was one of the people leaking stories, or accused her of indiscretion. So Prince Harry called David Beckham to ask him what was going on. Now, obviously, Harry and William have both been really close to the Beckhams over the years because, he's been he's involved in so many of their charities. Obviously, they're really involved in the FA, and just... He's just a national treasure, and he's everywhere, isn't he? He's at lots of royal events.
Yeah, they both went to the, if you remember,
Victoria
of course. And David both were at both William
they went
and
to both
Harry's
weddings.
weddings.
And obviously David's got an OBE. He got that back in 2003. So he was really close with all the royals. So Harry and David Beckham have a really strong... I'm calling him David as if we're pals. Yeah. Harry and Dave have got a really close friendship, but apparently after this accusation that Meghan made, they had this really awkward phone conversation, and the line in the book was that... where is it? Harry is very protective of Meghan, and he decided to deal with the matter head on by directly contacting his good pal. Quite rightly, he put Harry right, and the two men agreed to move on, but it certainly made things awkward for a while. So it does seem that there was a bit of tension between the two couples, which is a real shame.
Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, the book does say the two men agreed to move on, so maybe they've put that behind them now. I know Meghan has worn Victoria Beckham's
oh yeah, of course,
clothes. Obviously, she's a fashion designer in the past, so hopefully, maybe that's not an issue now. But according to the book, it was an issue at the time, and goes to show that maybe as what Tom Bauer is alleging, that the Sussexes certainly were reading a lot of stuff about themselves in the press, whether that be good or bad.
And another claim that stood out for me, and this is something that's been discussed a lot over the time, is that Meghan, lots of Meghan's friends were concerned when she started dating a royal. Yeah. Which I think is fair enough. Yeah. I would be worried if one of my friends did, knowing that the fact that, your life will never be the same again. You will be constantly in the spotlight. Yeah. But apparently, according to the book, Meghan snapped at one of her pals when she expressed her fears, mainly, kind of, I think, being fed up of hearing it. I suppose if you're getting it from every side, you want to be excited for a new relationship, don't you?
Yeah.
So apparently said, Gina, save it. Stop, be quiet. I don't want to hear any negativity. This is a happy time for us.
Yeah.
Which, again, I think sounds about right. If you're getting every single person you speak to says, no, and you're convinced this is your love of your life.
Yeah.
Then maybe.
I mean, you don't know how many times earlier that day, maybe. How many similar conversations, and you know what it's like when someone keeps telling you something you don't want to hear.
Exactly. All she wants to do is talk about a nice date night the night before and be all excited. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. What else for you? Give me another highlight for you.
Well, one highlight. I suppose highlight that I found quite amusing, really, was that apparently, according to the book, the palace were approving the scripts for Suits.
Oh, yeah. So this obviously, because she carried on, while they were dating, she carried on in her role
Yeah.
as Rachel Zane.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until things got a bit serious that she quit. And that's when she closed down the TIG. And that's when I think we all started prepping our Meghan and Harry engaged
Yes,
stories.
definitely.
But yeah, so it was the times before she quit, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was while she was still on Suits. I think they still had maybe a series or two of Meghan being in the of Meghan being in the show to go, and it said that scripts for Suits were sent to Kensington Palace for approval, and requests for changes were sent from London to LA, and there were strict requirements for Meghan's final scene. Now, I don't know if you watched Suits.
I did watch Suits.
I watched Suits. I've got to say, I actually quite enjoyed
I
Suits.
loved Suits. And I watched it before Meghan was Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. And I must admit, I probably would have like cashed out a bit, and it was only then because she was Meghan Markle and I needed to follow her for work reasons.
Yeah.
But the final was the wedding, wasn't it?
The final scene was Meghan's character Rachel marrying Mike Ross. He was called, wasn't he? Yeah, Mike, and obviously she was.
I used to love Mike Ross.
Yeah, I was a Harvey fan.
Oh really?
Yeah,
no, not at all.
But never mind. So the final scene was a wedding. Obviously, she was going to be pictured in a dress, and imagine if she was pictured wearing a dress.
Yeah.
You know, even before any, talk of engagement, and it was said that she wasn't allowed to be photographed wearing the dress and had to cover it with a jacket in between scenes. So
which does make sense, because even the clips of her in the show, those photos were used everywhere.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
So it makes sense just to see her walking down the thing would have been different. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting as well. Right, Jen, talk to me about dinosaurs.
The dinosaurs.
This was the bit that you weren't here, but my colleague who was going through the book with me actually burst out laughing when she saw this bit. It was just, again, not what they were not what I was expecting to read.
No, not about Meghan wanting to be with the dinosaurs, but never. Basically, when Meghan did move to London, obviously, when in the early days of her relationship with Harry, she became a big fan of the Natural History Museum in London, which I don't blame her for, because it's
amazing. And to go on a private visit would be the dream.
Yeah, so Tom Bauer claims in the book that Harry arranged for them to visit the Natural History Museum after hours, so kind of like a night at the museum kind of date, because, and this is what the book quotes, Meghan wanted to commune with the dinosaurs in private.